Hey everybody, it's Sean, Bewley the Kid. This episode I'm going to talk about something that happened in the wilderness in southwest New Mexico. It's very strange. It bothered many of us for years after it occurred. As some of you guys know, there's this book called Hidden Treasures of the Black Range. It says the real story of the lost Adams diggings. I'm in this book quite a bit, but I'm going to talk about something that occurred on one of the expeditions we went to there. And this is some of the pictures, and then this is the story the account I gave is right here. And so let's get started on it. So, ever since the 1980s, when we lived in Silver City, my dad, he was working at a company called West Stark Welding, and that was down on Bullard Street, and it was a welding shop. And anyway, my dad was a welder, and he became friends with Rex Nichols, who ran another welding shop. And then he met Rex's dad, Walt. And when my dad and Walt were talking, because my dad's really into treasure and treasure stories, so was I. My dad was talking with Walt, and Walt used to be cowboying that whole area up there, like the Diamond Bar Ranch and places like that. And Walt said when he was out in the wilderness, he was chasing some cattle, and I think he was chasing a cow up into some brush up near the Continental Divide, and he came across a cannon. And there was a cannon laying there. And ever since my dad heard that story, he was pretty obsessed with locating that cannon. As a kid, I ended up on so many trips up there. We went in all kinds of different ways. We went in through Meon, the Wall Lake Road, Meon, down Meon Hill. We used to go over through McKnight. And we used to just keep going there all of the time. My brother and I, we kind of got sick of it because we went so much, and we were looking through the forest up there, through the thick brush for a cannon laying there, and we could never seem to find it. But one of the things that happened to me up there is we were going up a canyon called Black Canyon, and I told my dad when we were going up there, it got really dark and really thick, and I said, man, wouldn't it be weird if the lost Adams diggings was here? And I said that when I was 16 years old. And he thought, well, maybe, could be. Well, it just turned out that many years later, as shown in this book, all the expeditions I've been up the other direction, we actually found the secret canyon. We found a zigzag canyon, a hidden door to get in the zigzag canyon, the waterfalls as described in the Lost Adams diggings, all that stuff. So we ended up going on a lot of expeditions up that way, probably in the early 2000s, all the way till, I mean, my dad still goes up there. He's in his 70s, and it's funny what stories will do to you. I mean, you'll get off your deathbed and go walking up there looking for lost gold. So I went on a lot of expeditions. Things got a little scary at times because I wanted to keep things quiet. My dad was a lot more open about things. He'd tell probably too many people what he was up to. And we started getting followed up in the canyon, and it was kind of disturbing. So that's why my friend David and I, we were childhood friends ever since Minnesota. We were both in the Army. He was in the Iraq War. And him and we started having to carry AR-15s and just kind of shadow my dad and Larry Ditzer up in the mountains. And it really got disturbing. One of the most disturbing things that I can remember is I didn't go on this trip, but my dad and Larry Ditzer and Mike Elin went up there, and they came out of the mountains, and they were staying in a motel room in Truth or Consequences. And just instantly that evening, they got raided by DEA, the sheriffs, everybody. Like, it was weird. It was like it was called in on them. I mean, here's these guys that have nothing to do with drugs or any of that stuff. And all these agents came into their room and started going through all their belongings. It was really bizarre. And my dad kind of thinks, they're just looking for drugs, and we didn't, we're the last people to have that. And I said, no, I think it's because you said too much. I mean, word got out to the locals there, and not all the law enforcement is real above the law. We experienced that over at Silver City. I could name names, but I won't. So, that was pretty disturbing. But anyway, we were on another trip one time, and it was my dad and Larry and David, my friend, and I. And we went up through the Zigzag Canyon, and there are all these old Spanish blaze marks in the tree, and they'd make a notch, and sometimes 3 notches. It'd be a different pattern. And the trees had kind of healed over time since they had done that, but those juniper trees take forever to grow. So they it had to have been hundreds of years since these trees healed. And there was this one area up there, when you go through the Zigzag Canyon, you can't camp anywhere. There's nowhere to be because the walls of the canyon are kind of steep, and there's a lot of boulders laying around, and there's nowhere to go. So we went up to this one area, and it's kind of just below this waterfall that a lot of the people in that area who've looked for the lost Adams diggings said didn't exist. It really did exist. There's this waterfall falling down into this plunge pool. But just before that one and the other waterfall, there was this area where we had enough room to camp. Well, what was weird about that area was there was these big rocks that were probably this big, and they were arranged in a circle, kind of like they were sitting around a campfire. And they were really overgrown. Some of them were half buried, but they were all around there. So we kind of knew something was up in that area. We had too many things from the lost Adams diggings come together on that. So we camped there. Many expeditions, we'd go there and we'd set up and we'd pitch our tents, potentially the same place the Adams party camped and built a cabin. And so now we're getting to what I'm going to tell you. It was really disturbing. One night, and this didn't happen every night, it was just this one time, we were just sitting around the fire, and this owl came flying in, and it was a Mexican spotted owl. And it landed on this kind of a tree branch that was prominent right where we were sitting. So we're just sitting there and we're just looking, and there's this owl, and my dad and I, our instincts are to grab our cameras because this is pretty cool. We like to film everything, wildlife and all. So we started taking pictures of this owl, and this owl started acting really bizarre. And it started kind of moving around on that branch, and then, you know, I've been around owls a lot, and this thing wasn't making owl noises. There was something weird from this owl. And then the next thing you know, another owl comes in and lands on a tree branch behind it. And we thought, okay, there's another one. And then another one came in. And these owls were kind of moving around. Some looked like they're just sitting there and they're looking. And then this one that was front center was just moving around. And, you know, I don't know how else to explain it, guys. It was really disturbing because it was like it was barking orders to the other ones. And then another owl came in. And then another owl. And we started snapping pictures. And guys, I don't know how many owls were there that night. Our pictures would, you know, when we take a picture, it would light the owl's eyes up. And so owls, we didn't even know how many owls were there even at the time until we got back and looked at the pictures. When we looked at the pictures, like, man, there was a lot of owls there. And I was snapping pictures this direction and that direction. So some of these pictures aren't even the same direction. And you can see owls. And so they started getting really aggressive. And this one was making these weird noises, and it was hopping around on the tree branch. And then David, he's a much bigger dude than I am. He starts getting pretty nervous because he just thought, this is not right. You know, and Larry, he was sitting there kind of amused because he looks at life like God will protect him, and he's pretty lighthearted, so he didn't get as riled up. But I was more interested in what they're doing, and David was wanting to get the heck out of there. So David, as these things started circling us, you know, one was barking out orders almost, and then the other ones were moving from branch to branch all around us. And then others were sitting in trees near it. And David, an Iraq war veteran, grabbed a frying pan, and he was going to protect himself because this was getting really bad. So he went right over to our dome tent to get in it, and that owl left the branch, and David was ducking, and the owl hit him in the head with his wing. And things deteriorated really bad after that, to where we all had to take shelter because, you know, at the time I was a firefighter EMT, and we hiked 10 miles back into the wilderness, and that's after driving an hour to get to the parking spot. I mean, there was no hospitals anywhere. So we were really going to be in trouble if something happened where we were injured. So all of us, for our safety, we went in our tents. And then after a few minutes, they probably left. But David was so freaked out that he wanted to just load up the gear or not and just get the heck out of there. And I said, you know what, we can't leave. It's totally dark. We can't navigate this canyon and find our way out. And he was telling me that, you know, he's been to war. He's faced all kinds of men. But he said this stuff really bothers him. It really makes him nervous. And he truly thought that the way these things were acting was almost demonic. I had never heard of owls flocking, but anyway, so that was really terrible because it just seemed like we were being attacked. And immediately after that episode, the digital camera that I was using, it was a good name brand like Sony. It completely quit and never functioned ever again. But the good thing is there was a little memory card in it. And I wanted to see, once we got back to TRC, we got to the hotel when we hiked out. I wanted to see what the heck was going on. And when I was looking through the pictures of the owls, it was really disturbing. It surprised me. So then I get back to Silver City. I'm kind of showing people these. Some of the Forest Service guys, they said that species of owl doesn't do that. They were shocked by the pictures. Now, if you look it up, owls of other species sometimes will flock. I think they called a group of owls a parliament. I think the Greeks called it that because they thought owls were wise. But just in general, the Mexican spotted owl is not known to flock. We've never had something like that happen, ever. Pretty much everybody I've ever talked to in the area has never seen such a thing. And, what was really creepy is we actually never saw those things much, the Mexican spotted owl, but when my dad went over to outside of TRC on another trip to interview somebody, one of those Mexican spotted owls just landed right on the guy's gate thing right above his walk-in gate to his house. It just landed there and watched my dad. So that's the only time we've had a huge amount of experience with owls. I mean, I remember in Minnesota, the great horned owl and stuff like that, they used to be huge. Had other experiences with owls, like my mom trying to pet the elf owls that were this big, and I'm like, no, don't pet the owls. They're not friendly. But anyway, so we really were trying to find answers as to why these owls did what they did. Now, growing up in Silver City, there was a certain amount of the kids that were Apache or part Apache. And they just, you mentioned this story to them and it's a no-brainer to them. They don't even think about the logical, scientific part of this. They just said, no, that's the spirits of the dead. I mean, they're just a matter of fact about it. And even my friend Mauro, his cousin's grandfather was full-blood Apache. And when he was a kid, they'd go out in the woods, out in the forest to cut some firewood and stuff. And if they saw an owl, they would just pack everything up and leave right away. I mean, they just wouldn't. It was an omen. Now, I'm a little less that way, but what I saw that night really bothered me. It's probably maybe in the top 5 what you call unexplainable incidences in my life. But we still tried to find some answers. I mean, there's got to be a scientific reason, because we were out in the middle of nowhere. Like I said, when I say nowhere, wilderness is nowhere. There's no roads into wilderness. You park in the forest, you hike through a lot of forest, and then you can get back in the wilderness. There's no vehicles, nothing allowed back there. So we weren't even by civilization at all. I think the closest town was Winston. And that's not even a town. It's like, I don't know what it is. It's a few houses. There's a gas station there, it's a little store, nice people. But we were in the middle of nowhere and never had that happen before, never had it happen since. And so, yeah, I've been looking for answers for it. Now, my friend Peter ran into our biology teacher from Silver High School, and he seemed to think it was some kind of owl study program. They're just used to humans and looking for food, but they didn't really act like they're looking for food. They were really aggressive with us, like they were going to haunt us or something. It was really, really awful. So when I heard about this owl study thing, I mean, it's a possibility, but in my opinion, if any government agency or private agency is involved in an owl study, that they're feeding many, many owls, and now all of a sudden they're going to go around in a flock and attack people. That's not cool, guys. I mean, if you're a government agency or you're trying to help this species, you don't make them friendly to humans. So I kind of didn't buy that. It didn't make sense. It didn't seem like that fit kind of the overall purpose of preserving the species. So anyway, I'm kind of scientific minded, but if any of you guys were there that night, you would have been just extremely creeped out by that. That was a horrible thing to be part of, and I wouldn't recommend that happen to anybody. Well, I could think of some people, but we won't go there. So anyway, there's the story of that. If you listened to this far in the story, I'm assuming you're old and retired and you have nothing better to do. So thanks for watching. I've got many, many, many other stories, and I'm going to talk a lot more about the Adams Diggings things and how they lined up with that area. And I'll probably put a link to that book in the description. I don't get a commission from that. People will ask me, and so yeah, you can get it on Amazon. And yeah, that's about it. So I hope you enjoyed this. Till next time, take care, guys.
Bewley, the Kid.